What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the SchuZ Show. I'm you guys' host, SchuZ Schumaker. I hope you guys are having a phenomenal Tuesday so far. With that being said, though, it's time to get into some boxing news. So, obviously, there's not going to be a guest on today's show, but we got a lot to get into in regards to some boxing news. So, to give you guys a quick outline of what we're going to be getting into, it will involve what I think should be next for Alexander Usyk and Manny Pacquiao, talking about MURTAZALIEV-LUBIN being ordered now, as well as the Daniel Dubois house party. I'm going to give you guys my thoughts on that. And then I'm also going to update you guys on Lawrence Okolie's torn bicep. And I will be giving you guys my updated pound-for-pound tiers to wrap up today's show. But before I go any further, I just want to make this very clear. If there are any comments or questions or topics you guys want me to discuss on today's show, make sure to leave it in the chat. If you disagree with me or agree with me, whatever the case may be, place it in the chat. I want to make sure we're talking there, and I'll put you guys' comment up on the show so you guys can go see that, and I will address it as I go through that. With that being said, let's hop right into it now. I'm going to kick off today's show with my updated pound-for-pound tiers. Let me pull this up real quickly on my screen so I can have you guys can see it real quickly. Let me pull it up. Here it is. This is my updated pound-for-pound tiers in boxing. There weren't a ton of changes after this past weekend, but there were enough names in this group. Let's go down from the bottom all the way to the top. Now remember, I don't go by pound for pound list in terms of ranking them in order. I feel like it's quite difficult to do so. However, I will go by tiers because I feel like that makes it a lot more simple to do. Going from the bottom, Zurdo, Yabuki, Navarrete, Espinoza. Next tier at number 6, Janabek, Opataya, and Virgil Ortiz. Then we're going up to number 5, Teofimo Lopez, Boots Ennis, Devin Haney, Duranta Tank Davis. At number 4 tier, Canelo, Shakur, Taraji, Benavidez. Number 3, this is where the change occurred. It is now Junto Nakatani all by himself at number 3. That is because Bam has moved up to the 2nd tier, joining both Dmitry Bivol and Artur Beterbiev in that 2nd tier. And then, at number 1, Usyk, Bud Crawford, Inoue. If I had to go out there and give you guys a specific ranking, I would place Usyk at number 1. His performance against Daniel Dubois has solidified himself at being number 1. You can make a very good case of that. I don't see anybody else being number 1. But since I go by tiers, that is my updated pound-for-pound tiers in boxing right now. Let's hop into some other boxing news, though. There has been a few different things I want to address on today's show. But I feel like there's nothing else that has more tension on it right now in boxing other than Daniel Dubois' house party situation. I'm going to give you guys the news that we supposedly have at this point in time. I will then give you guys my thoughts on it. Daniel Dubois allegedly had a party with 70 people in his house just a few hours before his undisputed title fight with Alexander Usyk on Saturday. He asked to go for a drive because he didn't know anybody there, and then those 70 people wanted to attend the fight. Supposedly, according to reports, Dubois and his group were stopped by security. Dubois' dad had to threaten security, saying that Daniel Dubois would not fight unless everybody could come in alongside him. All right. That's something that's interesting. But then something else comes into play. And what am I discussing here? Well, Don Charles goes out and comes on this Talk Sports show, and he gives his side of the story. And he says this, that they did the exact same thing for the Anthony Joshua fight last year. The only difference is that Charles came out and said this. Well, we added a few more people. I don't know what that number is, but they added some more people. And their hope is that the more people would add in more energy. Wild, but that's what supposedly the news is here. All right. Here's my thoughts on this. Daniel Dubois is a good person. I don't challenge that at all. I think he has a good heart. He obviously battles some other stuff and whatnot, but he's a good person, and he also is a great fighter. If I am Daniel Dubois, and it appears that this is the truth, that his dad orchestrated this entire house party, his dad's the one that brought 70 plus people, whatever it was, both at the party and then followed Daniel Dubois into the fight to be able to get tickets with him or whatever the case may be. And on top of that, Daniel Dubois' father is the one that brought this all about. And also Daniel Dubois' father was the one that prohibited and did not necessarily allow Daniel Dubois to go for a drive. Or at least Daniel Dubois wanted to leave the place because he was not happy with it, so he wanted to go for a drive. If this all is true regarding Daniel Dubois' father, there's only one answer that Daniel Dubois must do going forward, and that is remove his father from his life. His sister Caroline Dubois has already separated herself from this group for different reasons. And I feel like this is starting to become more and more clear. I get what Don Charles is saying. Yes, the more people brought energy, whatever. No, listen. All fighters have a very strict game plan leading up to a fight, especially the day of fight day. For anybody trying to interfere with that, that is messed up. And throwing a party of 70 people before the biggest moment of your entire life is absolutely ridiculous. There's no excuse for it. And at first, I would say, let's go out there and rip Daniel Dubois. But no, according to every report that we're currently seeing, this all came from Daniel Dubois' father. And sure, you could shovel the blame up upon Daniel Dubois for not kicking his father out of his life earlier. But at the end of the day, Daniel Dubois' father needs to be blamed for this entire situation. It's inexcusable. We saw the reaction to both Lawrence Okolie, Joseph Parker, and many others with this details now coming out. It's embarrassing. Throwing a party prior to the biggest fight of your life. And if we recall, even dating back to when Daniel Dubois was having his fight, it was reported at least that he was a little bit running behind. He only got to the fight about 90 minutes before he walked out, which is cutting it very, very short for typical fighters. So if this all is true, Daniel Dubois needs to get to a standpoint in his life where he holds his dad accountable and kicks him out of his life. Or at least becomes the man in charge of that relationship and does not allow his dad to do things like this. Absolutely inexcusable. And on top of that, you're telling me that Daniel Dubois didn't even know a lot of people there? It's disgusting. This was Daniel Dubois' biggest moment of his life, and his dad placed him in a position to be unsuccessful. I have never heard about it. Sure, there's crazy Mike Tyson stories and different things along those lines. 99.9% of the population needs to be so dialed in, locked in into a killer mindset before you step foot into a ring that there is no room for a party. That is one of the craziest things I've ever heard. And so if you're Daniel Dubois, it's time to actually hold your dad accountable and make sure that you remove him from your life if you're going to continue your career and go forward. Because I don't believe that Daniel Dubois' career is over by any stretch of the imagination. I believe Daniel Dubois will be world champion once again one day, and I believe that he will be very successful in the next decade or so. But the biggest thing prohibiting him from reaching his highest ceiling is his dad. Because what happened that we're now learning about this whole details about this party is absolutely ridiculous. And there is no room for that. If Daniel Dubois requested it, then Daniel Dubois needs to be held accountable. But from all counts here, is that Daniel Dubois' father was the one responsible for all of this. And that is unacceptable. And I would have hoped that a dad that his son has put himself in this position would have been more understanding and recognized what's actually at hand, what's at stake right now. Because his dad was not aware of that. And it is causing massive ripple effects both upon the image of Daniel Dubois now, also what happened in the ring, so on and so forth. And his dad should honestly be ashamed of himself for that. Absolutely ridiculous. There is no room for this. Let's head over to some other things I want to get into, one of which is Lawrence Okolie. He reportedly has torn his bicep in the first round of his fight against Kevin Lerena. It does make sense. Now, obviously, Lawrence Okolie fights a very interesting style, not the most entertaining, so on and so forth. But he started a dominant performance. And now that we learned, it was kind of, okay, this was something that when we looked at the fight, it looked like it could have been the case. There was a couple of pictures circulating on social media that his bicep did not look right. It looked torn. And when he came out and confirmed it, it's not shocking at all. But for Kevin Lerena, I feel like you have to look at this and be a little bit embarrassed, to be honest. Because he didn't look like he wanted to fight that night. It was very clear of that. And for Lawrence Okolie, props to him. Because he tore his bicep in the first round and still went on to absolutely clean sweep Kevin Lerena in that fight. So hats up to Lerena. Hats off to Okolie, my apologies. He did not have the most entertaining fight in the world. He got the job done, a good win, a step-up win, and on top of that, he did that with the torn bicep in the very beginning of a fight. So hats off to Lawrence Okolie, and for Kevin Lerena, you probably should have had a different game plan in that fight. All right, so what's next for Alexander Usyk? I gave my praise to Alexander Usyk yesterday for how great he is. And if we're going to be honest, if I'm Alexander Usyk, I'd have no problem walking away with what he just reportedly received was $132 million in the Dubois fight. That's the reports that's coming out that he's made $132 million in that fight. So if I'm Alexander Usyk, I would not even fault the man if he decided to go and just retire from boxing now. He owes nobody anything. He is coming out with in pretty darn good condition. All of his things attached. Nothing's wrong. He's got his mentals locked in. He'd be able to leave the sport on his own terms. I'd have no problem with him retiring if he really decides to. But on top of that, let me add one more thing. For Alexander Usyk, he has accomplished enough in this sport the heavyweight division, so on and so forth, that if it is true that he only wants one more fight in his career now, that he should be able to choose whoever he wants. For me, I want nothing to do with seeing him fight Tyson Fury unless Fury for some reason went out there and beat Joseph Parker, which is not going to happen because they're very close friends. But if Alexander Usyk, his last wish for his final fight of his career is to go out there and fight a trilogy with Tyson Fury, or a trilogy with Anthony Joshua, or any of those types of fights, then so be it. I won't come up here and throw a massive fit about the fact that, Alexander Usyk chose this guy or that guy. He's not ducking. It's his final fight. He can do what he wants. But if there is one fight to make it the heavyweight division that far exceeds every other possible fight, it is this one. It is Joseph Parker versus Alexander Usyk. 4 undisputed, all 4 belts on the line. I guess 5 are going to include ring. Fighting Joseph Parker. Joseph Parker has more than earned his shot for a world championship fight. And if we're going to be honest, nobody in the heavyweight division even compares to the likes of what Joseph Parker has done to earn this shot. What he's done in terms of beating time, guy after guy after guy, to rise up the rankings, whether that be Deontay Wilder, that be Martin Okolie, whatever, Zhilei Zhang, he has more than earned his shot at a world championship. He should have had that already in February against Daniel Dubois, and quite honestly, I think Joseph Parker could have beat Daniel Dubois in that fight. Who knows? We'll never know at this point in time. But Joseph Parker deserves a world championship shot. And that should be against Alexander Usyk. That's just from a moral, what's right standpoint. But if we're going to go a step further and look at this from what is the best fight to make a heavyweight division, it's also Joseph Parker. Stylistically, Joseph Parker is the closest. Nobody's really close to Usyk, but he is the most competitive in terms of skill sets at the heavyweight division that's top ranked right now to Alexander Usyk. And so from a stylistic standpoint, Joseph Parker does make for a very interesting fight. I still believe that Usyk would win that fight, but Joseph Parker, Alexander Usyk, that is the fight to make. No other fight makes more sense in the heavyweight division. And at this point in time, Usyk versus Joseph Parker is one of the best fights to make in boxing. If that is Usyk's final fight, and he goes out there and does this thing against Joseph Parker, he will have already further solidified himself as one of, if not the greatest heavyweights of all time, and one of the greatest boxers. He already is in that conversation, but that would only further solidify that he's taken out the entire era of heavyweights. Now, I know people could say, "Oh, what about Deontay Wilder?" Yeah. Okay, if Usyk fights Deontay Wilder, that would not even be a comparable fight, competitive fight. That would be an absolute onslaught, bearing a miracle KO by Wilder. So we already know what that result would be. It's a waste of time even thinking about that fight. The other one is that Turkial Sheik says he wants to make a fight for undisputed heavyweight champion Usyk and rising prospect Moses Itoma. All right, I like Turkial Sheik. I've always said that. But no, please don't. If we want to do Joseph Parker versus Moses Itoma right now, fine. I'm pretty positive I know how that fight would go, but we don't want Itoma right now. Itoma is fighting Dillian White in just a couple of weeks. Going from Dillian White, who is extremely overrated, has not looked good since PEDs, and is old, it's going to be an absolute onslaught by Moses Itoma. It's a great type of fight by name, but by skill, not really. Going from that version of Dillian White to fighting Alexander Usyk would be a very poor decision. Itoma is the future of the heavyweight division. You can make a very good case as the number 1 prospect in all boxing. No ifs, ands, and buts there. But fighting Usyk right after Dillian White is not the right step up. Now, if he were to go out there and beat Usyk somehow, would absolutely be one of the biggest statements you can make in boxing history. I just don't see that fight happening, and I hope it does not happen either. Unless Usyk for some reason really wants that, I don't think that fight should get made. I think the fight we still go with is what the WBO ordered. Alexander Usyk versus Joseph Parker. That's the fight to make. Make it happen. Let that be the final fight of Usyk's career, unless he really, really wants to fight somebody else. But if not, book it. Alexander Usyk, Joseph Parker, undisputed heavyweight championship of the world. That's the fight to make. Nothing else compares to it. Not only is that the best fight to make in the heavyweight division, it is now one of the best fights to make in all of boxing. Let's head over now to what's next for Manny Pacquiao. All right. Interesting. Now, we heard a lot of rumors that if Manny Pacquiao were to win a world championship, that Floyd Mayweather would be enticed to come out of retirement and do a rematch with Manny Pacquiao for a world championship. That's wild. All right. But that's been the reports, the news has come out as of recent times, and we knew that leading up to the fight. Therefore, in that situation right there, I just hope it doesn't happen. It makes no sense. I can get my thoughts further than that tomorrow. I'm going to go off of what we actually know here, and it's this. According to Manny Pacquiao Promotions, President Sean Gibbons has stated that Manny Pacquiao will likely fight again in November. Kind of crazy that Manny Pacquiao is going to be fighting twice this year now. And two opponents that will be considered are Gervonta Davis and Rolly Romero. So you're telling me that Manny Pacquiao could possibly call up a man in Tank Davis to come up to 147 and fight there. Now, I'm well aware that Gervonta Davis likes his money. He likes big fights, and he's already considered the Jake Paul fight, was nearing the deal. And so now you add in Manny Pacquiao. Would not be shocking, but it would be interesting. Obviously, Tank would be moving up essentially 2 weight classes to go out there and make that fight happen. Interesting. I feel like we still need the Lamont Roach rematch, but whatever. The fight that I do actually see possibly happening due to the PBC connections and him being the regular champion right now is Rolly Romero. Having Rolly Romero in 2025 fight Manny Pacquiao in the same year, 2025, would be something shocking. Nothing that I saw coming. It would be a curveball, but I feel like that's the most realistic fight to happen now. Albeit ridiculous and crazy to hear that. Manny Pacquiao, Rolly Romero is the fight I could very likely see happening in November. We'll see if it ends up happening, but that is the rumor. Suppose that's one of the fights that Manny Pacquiao is looking into. And if that is the case, it would be a very interesting fight to have happen there. I would have to imagine Pacquiao could possibly win that fight, but we'll see what happens there. Bakram Murtazavaliev and Erickson Lubin has now been ordered. Bakram has been ordered to defend his IBF Super Welterweight World title against the mandatory challenger Erickson Lubin next. Bakram Murtazavaliev stopped Tim Tszyu early last October. Lubin defeated Adriel Holmes in May. All right, here's the story here. Good fight. We knew that was going to get made. It makes sense. Sure, book it. Bakram Murtazavaliev will win by KO. All right, that's my early prediction. What I want to talk about here is the management team behind Bakram Murtazavaliev. Disappointed in them. Bakram Murtazavaliev made a massive statement in early October when he absolutely obliterated Tim Tszyu. Absolutely obliterated him. His name was going big time. He was being talked about, so on and so forth. His name was trending in a massive direction when he beat Tim Tszyu. And he set himself up to go out there and make other fights happen. Well, folks, it is now July 22nd, and Bakram Murtazavaliev is yet to return to the ring. Why? Where has Bakram Murtazavaliev been? I know. He's been calling out all these unrealistic fights that make no sense. For Bakram Murtazavaliev, this man is incredible. You can make a case if you exclude Terrence Bud Crawford, who essentially is 168 now, that Bakram's the biggest threat and the best fighter currently at 154. It certainly is a debate, but he's right in the mix right there. And you are currently fighting what I consider the best division in all of boxing. You have 10 to 15 guys, tons of depth, that you could create and make a big fight with. And yet, Bakram Murtazavaliev is sitting here with no fights getting made since October? After a statement win against Tim Tszyu? How is that possible? It makes absolutely no sense and it's inexcusable. You should have went out there and fought a guy like Charles Conwell before he lost. You should have fought countless other guys. Why did you not make those fights happen? That's a massive question to myself. When you are Bakram Murtazavaliev, the way he's been managed over the past year is literally embarrassing. In no way, shape, or form should Bakram Murtazavaliev had to make it this long without a fight until a mandatory re-emerge. Now he has to fight Erickson Lubin, who, yes, I believe Bakram will beat him. He's been out of the ring for a little bit of time, but I believe he'll beat Erickson Lubin with ease. But that's not the way to go out there and continue to brand yourself. Bakram needs to stay active. There was too many good names at 154 that he could have fought in between the Tim Tszyu beatdown and now. But for him to be stepping back into the ring in the near future against Erickson Lubin being the first time makes no sense. He could have cashed out big time, made big fights happen at 154, but he didn't. It's disappointing for a guy like that because the case could be very clear that he could possibly very easily be the best guy at 154. So you should not be threatened by anybody else. He should have stayed active and made big fights. So the way he's been managed over the past year has been embarrassing in my opinion. He should not have waited until another mandatory came into fruition. He should have just went out there and made the fight happen. That's my honest thoughts there. But as I said, it is fun. Bakram Murtazavaliev is back. Hopefully that fight gets made with Erickson Lubin. It's going to be an easy win for easy win for Bakram in that fight. We'll see where he goes from here. But that's the news that's now been released thanks to Jake Donovan from Jake and the Deboxing on X. With that being said, though, I don't see any comments currently going on in the comment section of the chat. Let me check real quickly to pull it back up. Should have answered everything there. So yes, with that being said, though, I appreciate each and every single one of you guys for tuning in. I knew it was going to be a short show today just because I had a late night show last week. Not too many breaking news coming out today. But with that being said, I will be back live tomorrow at about 12:30, maybe even at the latest 1 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Potentially, I'll have a guest lined up. We had one, he had to reschedule, so I'm working to get somebody else that could be in negotiations right now. But if that schedule comes to fruition, I will be announcing it in the morning. If not, make sure to tune in. Give me guys your thoughts on boxing topics, news, whatever it might be, and I will address that on the show tomorrow. I hope you guys have a phenomenally blessed remainder of you guys' Tuesday. May God bless you guys all. I will see you guys in, I guess it won't be too long. It's about 16, 17 hours. May God bless you guys all. SchuZ is out. God bless you guys.